training camp is set to begin at the end of the month for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I figured on today's show, presented by our wonderful friends over at Prize Picks, I'd go over a 53 roster projection before the start of training camp, because obviously training camp, there might be some things that shuffle around in the order, but if I had to pick today, who would be the 53 Jaguars players that I would have making the roster for 2026 and Liam Cohen's second season as head coach? Without any further ado, let's just jump right in on it, starting with the quarterback position. Trevor Lawrence is going to be on this team. No debate, no discussion needed. Just he's going to be on the roster, right? Yeah, exactly. Breaking news. Shout out to producer Reed. Now, at that second quarterback, I do have the Jaguars only keeping two quarterbacks at this current moment, and I'm going to roll with Nick Mullens being that second quarterback. I just think that at this current moment, there hasn't been a lot of separation in terms of the backup quarterback position, and so I'll trust Nick Mullens in terms of his quarterback experience, just being the guy that the Jaguars ultimately look to keep alongside with Lawrence. Carter Bradley and Joey Aguilar are some other names to mention, but I do think Mullens and Lawrence are ultimately the two that make the roster if I had to guess today. Moving on over to running back now, where I think Bhayshul Tuten, Chris Rodriguez, and LeQuint Allen, barring something unforeseen, are all locks to make the roster. Now, Chris Rodriguez is coming back from that left foot injury that he suffered at the beginning of the offseason programs. Expect him to kind of return to things and get up to speed. Not right away at the start of training camp, but once training camp kind of gets rolling. Same with Lanen, who we'll talk about here in just a moment. But him and Tuten are expected to share the bulk load of the carries for Jacksonville, so I have them making the roster. LeQuint Allen Jr. will be somebody that you see contribute on third down in passing situations, so I have him making the roster. And then in a bit of a shock, I have Jamari Taylor making the Jaguars roster as the fourth running back. Now, they still have Amir Abdullah along with DJ Dallas also competing for that number 4 running back spot. And the Jaguars did keep 4 running backs last year. So I do think Jamari Taylor, with his special teams upside that he brings coming out of college, that he could contribute alongside with being a pretty decent rusher. He wouldn't shock me if he's the one UDFA that the Jaguars brought in this offseason that actually makes this roster. And he's who I have currently making it. He had some good reports coming out of rookie minicamp / mandatory minicamp as well. So look for Jamari Taylor to be a potential name that gets added into this Liam Cohen's offense. And I want to hear from you guys. Which long shot are you rooting for to make this roster? Personally, I was a fan of Jamari Taylor's before the 2026 draft even happened. I loved his game coming out of Virginia, and somehow the Jaguars were able to get him as an undrafted free agent. So he is my long shot, but let me know down below in the comment section who your long shot is down below. All right, wide receivers. So I think this is pretty light now. You don't have Travis Hunter listed on this graphic. We'll talk about him more. I have him listed in the quarterback section, but he's obviously going to be somebody that, based on what Liam Cohen and James Gladstone said all offseason, he is going to be a part of this wide receiver room, but just to keep that in mind. Brian Thomas Jr., Jakobi Meyers, Parker Washington. No doubt about it, those guys are going to be on your roster, big contributors to your offense. And then I just have the Jaguars keeping Josh Cameron and CJ Williams. Cameron, I think, could potentially provide some value as a returner, more specifically as a punt returner that he did at Baylor. And I expect Williams to be on the roster competing for a depth spot that can also contribute in a variety of ways as a depth piece as well, another rookie wide receiver that the Jaguars drafted. So those are the 5 receivers along with Travis Hunter, who I think the Jaguars will also keep on this roster. Tight end now. 4 tight ends. Yeah, the Jaguars want to get big and they want to use 12 and 13 personnel. And to do that, you're going to need to keep a lot of bodies at the tight end position. Brenton Strange is obviously going to be your tight end 1, who you just extended this offseason. Nate Boerkircher, who you infamously took in the second round, that everyone seems to have an opinion on outside the building. I think he's going to be a major factor in the run game department this upcoming season. Tanner Koziol, red zone threat out of the University of Houston. I'm a big fan of his game. To me, it's really a battle between him and Quintin Morris to see who's going to be that tight end 3 going into 2026. But I think Koziol might have the chops to potentially challenge Quintin Morris here for some reps in Trevor Lawrence and Liam Cohen's offense. We'll get into the rest of my 53-man roster projection here in just a moment. Guys, we would not be able to do this show if it wasn't for our wonderful friends over at Prize Picks. Today's show is sponsored by Prize Picks, America's #1 sports picks app. Guys, Prize Picks has been awesome during the World Cup. I mean, we've been creating lineups in the office every single day, it feels like, and I've been having a blast. Like, I'm not the biggest soccer guy in terms of watching it on a consistent basis, but with Prize Picks, I've been locked in daily creating lineups every single day. You can also play baseball, a bunch of other sports that you can cash in with our friends over at Prize Picks. And the app is really easy to use. Just pick more or less on a few player stats and lock in your lineup. And you guys can even follow me on the app to see all of my lineups at CullenBro21. And we've got a little soccer lineup that one of our guys here at the office, shout out Nick Roloff here, who created for today's Argentina-England World Cup action. We got the more on Harry Kane's shots on target. This is an example of a 4-pick power play lineup, $10 to win $95. We had the more on saves between both goalkeepers, more on the goals combined between Bellingham and Alvarez, and then more on Messi shots. So just shout out to Taco Tuesday on that little discount there for the power pick lineup. And you can also do team picks. You can pick Argentina. You can pick England. Now, if you use that $50 in terms of the whenever you place your first $5 lineup, you can't use it towards team picks, so just make sure you're aware of that. But shout out to our friends at Prize Picks. New user offer. Download the Prize Picks app today with a link in the comments and the description, and use code HMA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code HMA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's going to be right. Shout out to them for being the sponsor of today's Jags. Now, getting into the offensive line here, where I think for the projected starters, at least to this current moment, we'll see how Cole Van Lanen progresses throughout the offseason program. He still has not been able to be at full strength, coming off that knee injury he suffered in week 18 of last season. But I've got Van Lanen, Cleveland, Hainsey, Mekari, and Harrison all making it as your projected starters, with Walker Little, Wyatt Milum, Jonah Monheim, and Emmanuel Pregnon to have 9 total offensive linemen making the Jaguars roster. I think with Little, he can play that left tackle spot if Cole Van Lanen is not able to go. Wyatt Milum has that guard tackle versatility. Jonah Monheim is your backup center, and I think Pregnon has a chance to be a potential starter as well for Jacksonville, but there is a really big drop-off after these first 9, so I would project Jacksonville to have 9 offensive linemen to start off 2026. Getting into the defensive side of the football now, where at the edge position, I've got the Jaguars keeping 5, and this was tough because the one lone rookie that I did not have making the roster, at least initially, I think he could be added to the practice squad, was Zach Durfee, who the Jaguars took in the 7th round of this past NFL draft. And I do think that Josh Hines-Allen and Travon Walker, who are now paying pretty big money to both of them, they're going to be your obviously 2 lead guys at edge. Wesley Williams, who you took in the 4th round out of Duke, he is going to be on this roster, along with BJ Green, who got a decent amount of snaps last year. And shout out to Danny Striggow, who could very well be this team's 3rd edge rusher behind both Hines-Allen and Walker. I have these 5 making the roster at the edge position. And guys, if you're excited for training camp, hit that like button. Liam Cohen and the crew are going to be loaded up here, getting things going here at the end of the month. And I think that Jaguars fans should be very excited for what the Jaguars have in store for training camp. And I'm excited. If you're excited, hit that like button. Let's try to see if we can get 100 likes on today's episode. Can we do it? I believe in the Jaguars now, real ones. And guys, football is almost back. We're right there. If you guys are very excited for Jaguars training camp, hit the like button, and let's get in with the rest of these projections. Defensive tackle. Now, this is one where you kind of have to make some tough calls here, right, and tough decisions in terms of, keeping guys versus guys that maybe you try to get back on the practice squad, this, that, or the other. For me, I left off Durfee, and they very well could keep him. I do have the Jaguars keeping 5 defensive tackles, though, with Arik Armstead and DaVon Hamilton expected to be your 2 starters, with Ruke Orhorhoro, who you traded for this earlier this offseason for Mason Smith, Albert Regis, who you took in the 3rd round out of Texas A&M, and then I've got them bringing back Matt Dickerson, who I thought was one of their better depth pieces at the defensive tackle spot last season. He very well could be on that roster bubble where, depending on how he performs in training camp, does he get a potential spot on this 53-man roster? Only time will tell, but as of this current moment, I do have them having Dickerson make the 53-man roster. Getting over to linebacker now, where Foye Oluokun, Ventrell Miller are expected to be your starters after the departure of Devin Lloyd. They will be your 2 lead backers, although there might be some sneaky competition. Jack Kaiser, Branson Combs could very well make their case to be that starting linebacker opposite of Foye Oluokun. Dennis Gardeck, I'd actually expect to maybe potentially have some more snaps at that edge position, but he does have some off-ball linebacker ability as well. He can also contribute on special teams. I have him making the roster. And then 7th rounder Parker Hughes. He's also a guy that maybe he makes it, maybe he doesn't, depending on how he performs in training camp. Didn't hear a lot about him, but do think it's a possibility that the Jaguars keep their 7th round pick out of Middle Tennessee. So shout out to him. Going over to corner now, where this one, it's kind of tough. I honestly debated, should the Jaguars keep 6 corners? I went with 5 for now, and it pains me that I left Jabbar Muhammad off this list, who has been an absolute, it feels like him, Brian Thomas Jr., Parker Washington. Those are the 3 names I'm consistently hearing whenever I'm looking up reports from Jaguars beat writers that have the on the boots on the ground knowledge surrounding Jaguars offseason activities so far. I think they're going to potentially try to bring him back on the practice squad, but if he continues to show up, he could very well make this list. But as of right now, I'm going to go with Travis Hunter, Monteric Brown, Jordan Lewis, who are going to be your 2 starting outside corners, along with your starting nickel and Jordan Lewis. And then you got Jarian Jones and Christian Braswell, who are 2 corners that played very well for you last year, can have that inside and outside versatility. And that leaves the Jaguars with 5 corners that I have them keeping on the roster. Part of the reason that I did that was because you have a couple of safeties that can play in that nickel spot if necessary, and Caleb Renshaw and Jalen Husky. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the safety room shakes out. If I had to guess today, I think Eric Murray and Antonio Johnson are your 2 starters in that back secondary in Anthony Campanelli's defense. Although Caleb Renshaw, I think, is going to push for playing time. Rayon Lane, I think he's more of a special teams contributor, although I think the Jaguars do like him. And then Jalen Husky, who you took in the 3rd round out of Maryland. Does he potentially get some look at nickel or maybe at safety? Only time will tell. I do think they keep him, though, on the roster, which then brings us to the final 3, your special teamers, who I think it's pretty much a lock at this point. You extended Ross Matisic. He's going to be your long snapper. Logan Cook and Cam Little, your kicker and punter, respectively. I think if I had to project today, these are going to be your special teamers, and I feel probably the most confident outside of maybe like Trevor Lawrence that these 3 are going to be the starters of this at their respective positions. And those are my 53-man roster projections, at least for now, ahead of training camp. Things can obviously change with given reports and whatnot. But if I missed anybody or you think I'm off or maybe I left somebody off or maybe you agree or disagree, let me know down below in the comments section. And, guys, make sure you hit that subscribe button for coverage all year long around your Jacksonville Jaguars. Until next time, guys, peace